the question that you ask is what is a job or what is a gain? Also, I had the same question, and I came up with a definition that makes sense. It's like the gain is like the benefits you have, and the job is just the things that you try to execute on, but the gain is going even further.
Welcome to the Product Quest podcast. Thank you for joining us on our journey to better understand innovation and product strategy. My name is Jonathan Edwards, and joining me, as always, my co-hosts Jan Vermuth and Scott Burleson. Our guest today, Eckhart Boehme, is a strategy consultant and the developer of the Customer Progress Design Method. He's the co-creator of the Wheel of Progress, a canvas based on jobs to be done and inspired by Bob Moesta's 4 Forces model. More recently, Eckhart has been experimenting with AI tools and has developed an AI-based app that helps with analyzing customer interviews and processing the data. Eckhart is also an expert on Clayton Christensen's work, and prior to becoming an independent consultant, he worked at Microsoft for over 18 years. Eckhart is the founder and managing director of Unipro Solutions. You can find the website at unipro-solutions.com. You can also find additional information about his tool, the Wheel of Progress, which we will be discussing today, at wheelofprogress.com, all in one word. So Eckhart, welcome to the Product Quest podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, in the jobs to be done landscape, there are different schools of thought, the two main ones being those influenced by Clayton Christensen and Bob Moesta on the one hand, and those influenced by ODI and Tony Ulwick on the other. From what I gather, I would say you're more in the Christensen camp. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say that is a fair assessment, yeah. I studied Clayton Christensen's and Bob Moesta's work when I came out deeply, and I kind of fell in love with it. And I also looked at what Tony Ulwick does with his ODI framework. I think both are really great frameworks to help us understand and also to frame jobs to be done in a practical way. But since I did kind of look so much at Bob's work and also what Clayton Christensen came up with, I said, okay, this is a framework I want to pursue going forward.
And could you maybe give us what are the key components of this, let's say, what shall we call it, the Christensen-Moesta approach to jobs to be done?
Yeah, I think many roads lead to Rome. That is a saying that also makes here a lot of sense. I found it a little bit unfortunate that there was a kind of a two camps and felt like they were discussing or maybe even fighting with each other. I thought that's not very kind of helpful for jobs to be done as a big idea. But I like the notion of progress that customers go through, that like a customer journey in order to make progress, and starting with the first thought and going kind of through a lot of struggles in order kind of to improve their lives, buy a new product, a new service, or kind of do it yourself, and then hopefully in a better situation. I really like that. I also appreciate ODI, I have to say. Back in the days where I worked at Microsoft, I was very much involved in something called a job task analysis. So I really appreciated the detailed look at kind of customer jobs. We looked, of course, at the employee jobs or IT professional jobs, but I see some similarities with the ODI framework, and it just really depends on the altitude you want to take. You can go kind of very kind of low down into the nitty-gritty manual task-oriented job to be done, and you can kind of rise up above kind of the sky at like 30,000-40,000 foot level and look at the customer job from the very top. It's like all these unspoken customer jobs that we never hear in a customer interview, but which are subconsciously driving people to do certain actions. So that's what I like. I mean, I think both are very valid. Those are very justified, but kind of I like to go at a higher level and look kind of down from the top, so to speak.
So this idea of progress, could you maybe expand a bit on this? You mentioned something about, so you mentioned the word struggle also. So I seem to have understood that this is something about events happening in people's lives. I know also about the timeline in this approach. Is this related? So is this timeline related to the progress? And maybe if you could tell us a bit about this timeline and what that is.
Yeah, exactly. The timeline is of course it's a continuation of time, and we on our path to try to make progress in life, we encounter many kind of pushbacks, challenges, but also on the other hand encouragement and insights. And so what we have tried to do is combine both concepts that we really loved and worked with, but we had them on two canvases. We had a canvas with the timeline, we had a canvas with the four forces model that you mentioned, and we wanted to bring both together to see kind of at what point of time do people struggle to make progress. So as you move through this customer journey, you have to deal with opposing forces. You have forces that kind of drive you forward, and you have forces that are holding you back or pushing you back. And I think as a provider of services, we should think of ourselves as provider of progress and help customers move through this journey, this customer journey, and try to help them at every kind of stage of struggle in order to, at the end of the day, make progress, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So you mentioned a few different things here. So the four forces, which I understand is a key component of this approach. And you also mentioned customer journey, which is quite a well-known term. So it seems to me here there's, from my understanding, this is something that doesn't really appear. So this idea of customer journey, at least not explicitly in the ODI method, for instance. I mean, you can of course use the ODI methodology to design something like a customer journey, but it doesn't seem, and I would say that's, as I understand it, maybe you can correct me, that is probably a core difference between these two approaches, that there's really this notion of a timeline, of a customer journey, which is at the core of this Christensen Moesta approach, which maybe is not so much at the core in the ODI approach. Would you say that that's about right?
I think that's a fair assessment. I have to say I'm not an expert on ODI, but my understanding it has a different focus. And I think the benefit of looking at the timeline, and we kind of redefined it as a cycle of progress, because once you're done with your progress, there may be a period of time where you're inactive, but eventually you will enter the journey again and make another cycle. And I think what the benefit is of doing this is that it gives a meaning both to marketing and sales as well. Because if we declare progress as our mission that we want the customer to help with, then suddenly marketing as well as sales become more like a buying aid, and instead of kind of pushing products and influencing customers and making them buy our product. And I think it's a different standpoint that you're looking at. And I think everyone wants to take the customer point of view, but it's so hard to leave your shoes and step into the shoes of customers. So what we try to do is portray that journey from 100% from the customer point of view, and not kind of putting a journey map on the wall and just putting on some sticky notes that we think that the customer artificially should go through. No, we know customer journey can be very complicated, very kind of a totally messy things, going back and forth, exploring solution space, look at solutions, but going back to exploring because they don't like the solution or it's too expensive. But we need like a model that is simple enough so it works, it's manageable, and it needs to be complex enough so it isn't over simplifying things. And that's why we came up with that kind of combination of the timeline that now has the shape of a cycle, the 4 forces, and we added another few things to that canvas as well.
So that is the wheel of progress, yeah?
Exactly, that's a wheel of progress.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I maybe just ask you? So I'm still. I mean, I know it a little bit, but I'm still struggling to bring the pieces together. Can you So okay, maybe I'll just ask the question. If you say timeline, what I know, and I'm also not an expert on Moesta's side, but what I've heard of is these different steps, basically of the purchasing journey, if you like there's a passive looking and active and different words that they use, but basically there's they follow the purchasing journey. Is that what we mean by timeline, or is timeline in order to make progress, you are somewhere, then something happens, and then when you get there, how do these things relate? I don't know exactly how they fall.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's I would say, as far as I understand your question, it's a combination of both. It is events and it is phases, and each event causes that you move or helps to move to the next phase. So if you start with the first thought, you may not immediately go to active search. Of course, there may be some first thoughts that you think, what I have doesn't work anymore as in the past, and eventually I need to change. And then you're opening up to solutions, and hopefully you get an inspiration. And that could be like the first event that's happening. It's like when we did an interview about cargo bikes, and there was a family thing about buying one, but it was not until they went to Denmark and saw people kind of loading the cargo bike with people and red wine and glasses and going to the beach and falling in love with it, or kind of getting inspired. And then, when people actively search, that also doesn't mean immediately that they eventually will buy. It could be that they need something else, like a second event. It's like increasing the push, or maybe taking some roadblocks out of the way, so they can enter this phase of looking at products, comparing them, choosing the right one for them, and then buying, and then hopefully enjoying the benefits of that new product.
Okay. So these different forces that hold you back, so the push, pull, and I think there's anxiety and habit. So these play a role in all of these events, if I understand you correctly, then.
Exactly. And so we started when we built the Wheel of Progress. We started with the timeline, but over kind of, it was like a day and night project for me. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and then I thought it needs to be, it shouldn't be like a timeline, a straight line. It should be more like a cycle, cycle with a break where people feel comfortable with what they have. And then we put the constraints into the middle, because we thought it would be nice to have some more context. But context can be anything. The wall is blue, the wall is white, the wall is green. It really doesn't matter. But what does matter is that these things, matter of facts, that factual things that are in the way of making progress, that make it hard. It could be like your financials, your health. It could be like a window of time that you have to make progress in that moment. It could be external factors like, after COVID-19, we got like new laws, we got new regulations. Suddenly we couldn't go to the doctor anymore and things like that. So these constraints are like the hub of a wheel when it's not greased well, when it's squeaky, when there's friction, you cannot turn the wheel. That's how you can think of constraints. And when we do interviews, sometimes we discover lots of constraints, and then we understand why it's so hard to turn the wheel, why it's taken so long, and it's so painful for people to make that progress. So we had like this structure. It looks like a donut almost. Like we have the timeline, which is a cycle. It's like the cycle form. Then we have in the middle we have the constraints, and then we have the kind of the four events. We have the first thought, first event, second event, and the buying event. And when you draw the lines like a cross, then you have like 4 quadrants. And then we thought about, what can we put into the quadrants? And I thought, logically, from when you work with a canvas, it probably makes sense to start at the top left when people start their journey, and have forces that are opposing. It's like the push wants you to move forward, and the habit holds you back. And these two guys are always fighting against each other. So the question is, who's going to win? Going to win the push or the good old habit? In the second quadrant, we didn't have any of these 4 forces, because they come later into play when you're in the trade-off phase, when you try to decide what is the right product. So what I thought, what would be nice to capture like the ideal, typical situation that people create when they make up their minds, when they don't know at that point of the journey what they want, when they just explore the solution space. It's like this guy here in my neighborhood it was like my first or second Jobs We've Done interview, and I asked him, why did you buy this Ducati, a matte black 5-figure Ducati? And he said, yeah, I'm 45, kids are grown up, I'm divorced, now I can do whatever I want. And I said, okay, what else did you consider? And he said, I thought about doing a kind of motorboat license, driver's license. I thought, oh, that's interesting. Have you thought about maybe, would you have been interested in learning to play e-guitar? He said, yes. So he was in that kind of midlife crisis, and he wasn't sure about the solution space at that point. So I thought that might be interesting to ask people in the interviews what the ideal typical solution would have looked like. We know people make stuff up, and also what they want to avoid in a new situation. So we had like these 3 quadrants where you start habits and pushes, you have the desired outcomes and avoidances, then you have the pull of the new product and anxiety that comes with the new product. Is it really going to help me? Are they over-promising? And then we have the 4th quadrant at the lower left, is where we then say, okay, let's collect all the customer jobs with their pains and their gains. So all experience, not the fears, not the concerns. It's really tactical. What did people experience? That's what we put in the 4th quadrant. And now you have like the canvas, and when you fill it, we look at 12 elements that we want to find. And
so I definitely want to get into do justice to the wheel of progress and get into the details of that. But I think it is useful, well, both for me and maybe for the people listening also, to understand I still wanted to dwell a bit on the like the core components of the timeline and the forces, and namely I still had a question regarding the timeline, which is in your opinion, what is the use of adding these time dimensions in is it just a kind of elicitation technique, so that when you do an interview you can get more information because people remember what they did, or because it seems to me definitely in the ODI, there's no assumption about the time. There's just desired outcomes that you get, and there's not really this idea of this happened first, and then there was this event, and so how do you see that? How does the time play in and why is it important to have this ordered in a kind of time manner?
Yeah, excellent question. We started actually with using the timeline as a storytelling framework. So please tell us the story how you got to this product and kind of what happened along the way. And it was until we launched the Wheel of Progress then that we found value in capturing what happened. So all the events, first thoughts, and maybe buying events. And what we figured is like when you, let's say you do like 10 interviews, which usually is a good number. Sometimes it's enough to do 10 interviews. And in these interviews, around one topic, you find the same events. Like we did something around finding a new accommodation for a loved elderly one. And like a senior living home or assisted living or sometimes hospice, of course. And we found that in many of the interviews, we always heard the same things. First thoughts is like coming back from the doctor. Doctor is saying, hey, you should think about a new accommodation for your loved one. It's not gonna go forever like this. And then dementia, people driving cars, they get lost. All terrible things are happening. They get hospitalized, accidents, falls. There were a ton of things that we heard that always repeated in interviews. And we thought, wow, that would be great to capture those items because we can use them later on when we think about a strategy that is customer-centric. We can think about how to respond to events. And they are a great source of information. They are not just, hey, help me to tell the story. We can actually anticipate sometimes what's going to happen next when we know the events, and then we can, as I said, we can respond to it.
So, for instance, in this example that you mentioned for elderly people, how would the product here, let's say, would be for people who have I don't know what it's called, elderly homes, homes for elderly people, or I don't know what you call that in English. Well,
senior living home, for example.
Senior living, okay, facilities or senior living homes. Okay, so how would this information be able to be exploited? How can it be exploited or used to make better homes for elderly people? That's kind of, for me, the thing I'm trying to understand. It's definitely, I totally get that it's useful information in terms of maybe figuring out how you can get access to potential customers and stuff like this. But how can it help you design a better home for elderly people?
Well, when the interview captures that experience within the home, then you have lots of material that you can use. And we know, we heard in the stories what's going to happen if people are not satisfied with a senior living home or nursing home or something like that. It's like they are not well nutrition-wise. Mental health is an issue. They are lonely. They are kind of get separated from life. They lose their purpose. There's tons of stuff going on that cause them to get worse. And those in that case, I would say it's like the experience at the facility that could be improved. And you mentioned it, the buying process. If we are somehow in the ecosystem of elderly care, we can use that information to help clients move through that cycle, starting perhaps with an advertising campaign. Don't procrastinate. And if you procrastinate, your elderly loved one may have some harm because you don't have time to look for a nice home because you have to be reactive because something happened. You can think about maybe consulting services because people are overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, now I have to find a new home. It's so complicated. And what are the financials? What can we afford? And all huge issues. And then you can think about also selecting the right home. It's like certified providers that are quality approved, that are available, that are geographically not too far away. So in each of these quadrants, I think you can use that information, also the what happens next information, to anticipate for the customer what's going to happen, and try to be proactive and help the customer in that particular phase to make progress.
So let's dive a bit into this wheel of progress. So you've discussed a few of the different elements. Maybe it could be interesting. You mentioned this was that you woke up in the middle of the night and had this idea. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about this origin story? Was there, I mean, why did you wake up that night? Were you on a project and something was bothering you? Or I'm quite curious, what pushed you? What was the pull for you, to use your terminology, to design this kind of new canvas, or slightly modified canvas?
I was just gonna say, like, what were first thoughts, and then active looking around, and so
yeah, you can
please follow that format.
Yeah, it was quite a story. Originally, I did not really plan on creating a canvas or a method. It was like it kind of fell into place, and it's not something you sit down and you draft it and there you got it. It's not. I mean, it's totally the opposite. I have worked with jobs to be done canvases before, and I thought they are great for understanding the job to be done at that time when people consume it, but they were not, or try to execute it, but they were not really helping us to capture the story. And when Peter Rochel and I, when we sat in Cologne in summer of 2019, we thought about can we create something? Can we create a new tool that's going to help us in our work to simplify it, and also save time in explaining what jobs to be done is, because it took us like half a day to explain what it is, and the rest of the day we could do some work. And I really hated that, and clients also didn't want that. So we were looking for kind of baking jobs to be done into a new canvas, so it's intrinsically handled. And so we look at so we were looking at combining, as I said, the timeline, the forces, and then with every iteration, the timeline was bent even more. It was like slightly bent, and then it was like an arc. And then I thought, no, it shouldn't be an arc. It should be a cycle with a break. And then I said, okay, let's think about constraints and put them in the middle. And then it looked like a donut. And then I thought, okay, we have these 4 simplified customer journey, kind of these events: first thought, first event, second event, and buying. And then, okay, let's put them aside and draw these lines. And then there was a structure. And then you think about how do you want to fill the structure? So there was another kind of iterations. We experimented with lots of ideas. And then we settled with this, what I described before: quadrant 1, opposing forces; quadrant 2, desired outcomes and avoidances; quadrant 3, pulls and anxieties, and the fourth one is like, let's put all the jobs with pains and gains in there. So, and then we had it. Then Peter helped to make it a kind of nice looking canvas. And then I think at a bar camp in Frankfurt in September 2019, we put it out. And then we suddenly had people say, "Oh, what's that? It looks like a nice canvas." And then, yeah, we put it out, and people kind of liked it, because it's not a hypothetical, theoretical, based on assumptions customer journey. It's something that you can fill with life. We can fill it with real data, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I'll try and it's hard for people to. I invite everyone who's listening to search for this canvas on wheelofprogress.com. We'll do our best to try and talk about it without the visualization for people who are listening. So just to recap, so there's 4 quadrants. There's 2 circles in the middle at the intersection of these 4 quadrants. And so you go from the top left, as you mentioned, and then you go round, and you go round clockwise. That's correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
so
I also thought about why don't we start at 12 o'clock? I mean, the clock starts at 12 o'clock. And I thought, actually, maybe it would be nice to have on one side where the customer is not actively looking on the left-hand side for a new solution. And on the right-hand side, that's kind of these 2 quadrants where customer actually actively look for a solution. So that was kind of, okay, maybe let's start at 9 o'clock and still works.
yeah. And so the center, so there are 2 concentric circles at the center. The very center one is the constraints. Is that correct?
It's a constraints, like the hub of the badly.
And what is a constraint for you? Just so we're kind of clear. What would be an example of a constraint, for example?
Yeah, a very typical constraint is like money. What's your budget?
Okay.
Do you have the budget for cargo bucket that costs like 5,000 to 9,000 euros, right? It's in the way of making progress. Or we had another one that was also nice. There was a nurse coming home from night shift, I think like at 8 or 9, not night shift, but very long day shift, like at 8 or 9. And she was looking for a yoga class, and there was no yoga class. So she was kind of constrained by her schedule. And as I mentioned before, there are external constraints as well. It's like laws and like HIPAA or any other law or regulation that keeps you from kind of moving forward as you want. Or maybe you didn't have that constraint and there's a constraint suddenly, and then you cannot do these things that you have done like always. And then they may or may not cause a feeling. In many cases, they create something like a bad feeling, like, oh, I don't like that. But it's not always. We live with lots of constraints, and they don't bother us. We just accept them as they are.
Okay. And then so in the second, so just outside the second circle, what goes in there in that? So you've got the constraints in the middle, and then in the second circle, what would be there? In
that reflects the timeline. It's like at 9 o'clock.
So you'll write the events down there.
Exactly.
So okay.
Yeah,
and then
we write the events down with kind of sticky notes at 9, 12, 3, and 6 o'clock.
Okay, got it. So yeah, okay, and so have you modified as so I think you did mention you did modify it as you used it, but what were your first what was your experience using this canvas live with companies? So maybe at first, how did it work? How was it received? And then what did you change? And how is it used now? How what's been your experience with it at the moment?
That's fantastic to talk about the real experience with it. I mean, was my business partner Peter Roll, who used it the first time in an already running project. So he changed like horses or tools that he was using, and it was he took the risk, and it was a big client, and he said to me, it worked. And so what we changed and what we didn't change, we did not change the structure of the wheel of progress. What we changed a little bit, what we put on the wheel of progress, because we started putting like demographics and some, I don't know, anything that doesn't fall into these 12 elements. And we figured now that we don't need that. We don't need that, because we need also be very selective and kind of throw things out that you cannot really work with. I cannot make a decision based on a demographic data. I cannot. I mean, it's like, we know jobs to be done are independent of the
principle of jobs to be done. Yeah,
exactly. So that's more like the adjustment that we did. Is like really focusing on on really 12 things, which is customer jobs, pains and gains. So
yeah, okay. So let's say,
yeah,
so
okay.
what are the 12 things? Customer jobs, pains and gains. That's 3. Yeah. Okay.
It's 3, right? And we are following Alexander Osterwalder's value proposition canvas. We like the circle, the right-hand side of the value proposition canvas. So pains, jobs, pains and gains.
Yeah.
And then we like the next layer. When I look at this graphically, it would be context, so events, constraints, and solutions. So we also capture solutions, all the whole suite of solutions that people pull into their lives in order to make progress. That can be things like I bought a cargo bike, but along with the cargo bike, I bought an insurance. I bought a big lock, and I bought a canopy because I don't want the kids to get wet. But it also could be buying aids. It could be like a forum or YouTube where I can inform myself about using a cargo bike. It could be even other people I talk to. So these could be communities, that could be all kinds of solutions. And the reason is, I mean, first of all, it's nice for storytelling. So you have the complete story, and also the solutions, they point to customer jobs. So when your customer job list is incomplete, you can look at the solutions hired, and then you find, okay, there was a customer job of getting this thing insured or something. And so it's another cross check. And then we have 6 now,
Yep,
and then
6.
we have 6 on the outside, on the the very outside layer of that onion, if you will. And then we have the forces and desired outcomes and avoidances. So we have 6 again.
So we have 3.
No, 4 forces. So that's +4. 6 + 4 is 10, and then 2.
The 4
2
forces.
additional one. Like each
Okay.
force,
exactly.
each
force is one element.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, got it.
And that's it. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could ask me, okay, did you ever feel you needed something else? And I have to answer no. I always look at other models, and it's if something is not immediately logical, there's kind of no association, then I try to reframe it. And up to now, it went well. I didn't find many things that I couldn't associate. But if in the case there is something happening, we just put it in the donut. We leave it there, so it's documented, but we may not be sure whether it's a pull or pain or something. Then we just leave it on the canvas.
So this is actually maybe for me something. Jan, you wanted to ask a question?
Well, maybe just I wonder if you could also expand a bit, like is the wheel of progress? I mean, on the one hand, it's a structure, but is it, once you fill it up, is that something that in the end there is one wheel of progress? Does each individual have their wheel of progress? So it seems like there is, or is it a tool that you use to make sense of whatever another person is babbling about, or so you see what I mean? Does everyone does each buyer have an individual wheel of progress, or is there the wheel of progress and that's kind of the market? And so
no, yeah, it's also something we struggled with. We started to use the wheel of progress for like 1 wheel per interview, and sometimes people are talking about, they kind of deviate. So let's talk about this last thing that you bought, and then people deviate, they go into the past, and they figure that totally
my grandma
another cycle of progress, right? Or they may have entered a new cycle already because they have thought about something new. We had we did an interview around electric automobiles, and there was this family bought in like a BMW i3, and by accident we found out they already bought another one. So the recruited buy wasn't the actual, the latest one. There was a new one. So we can even go sometimes into the future without asking hypothetical questions. But did you already think about it? Did you already actively search for something, and people say, yeah, I bought this tablet PC, and then I bought this this stylo that enables me to make handwritten notes and sketches and things like that. Okay, then they kind of entered the next cycle again. So to long-winded story, but yes, we try to be as clean as possible, putting kind of every interview or every cycle on one wheel. Sometimes you capture like maybe 3. There was one interview we had like 3 or 4 different cycles, and then we distributed them as good as possible onto other wheels. So we were kind of clean with that.
Okay.
I also had a question as you went through these elements. So maybe a bit of just a personal story. So I was a very big fan of Osterwalder's approach. I was like, this is really cool. And then as I started trying to use it, I often faced some challenges or some issues where I was like, so what is this? Is it a job? Is it a pain? Is it a gain? I never knew what to put where. And actually, my route to jobs to be done was through the Osterwalder canvas, because when he said jobs, it's kind of mentioned in the book at some point. I think he mentions Tony Olwick's work, and so I thought, I'll go and see what they're talking about. So that's how I got to that. But I was wondering, there are 3 different terms here that seem to me, in my ignorance, maybe potentially redundant. So, so the pains and gains, the 4 forces, and the desired outcomes. So, what is the difference between these things in the end? And have you found that you often get this, like have the same post-it notes in these different categories, or is it really a different things?
Yeah, it's a great topic for discussion. This clearly has been, at least at the beginning, it has been challenging to us as well, because you're dealing with different concepts. You try to bring them together. They have to be distinctive in order to not to be confusing. So, for example, we figured that we captured a lot of constraints which were pains, and vice versa. So over time, we developed a catalog of criteria. So I documented this in this handbook. So each and every element is described in very much detail with examples. And the question that you ask is, what is a job or what is a gain? Also, I had the same question, and I came up with a definition that makes sense. It's like the gain is like the benefits you have, and the job is just the things that you try to execute on, but the gain is going even further. And that's right. And there can also be sometimes a little bit redundancy when people have a push, which is like a strong pain in the past, and then they formulate that as a desired outcome, so that negative becomes a positive, and then they look at the product, and that's again a positive because it pulls them over, because it solves that solution. And so but there's a story, and you can when you do the interviews and capture the items, you can tell the story, and sometimes it morphs because it changes when people realize there's no ideal product in the world that costs nothing. It's like they always have to make compromises. So it's like a storytelling tool. And I also want to go back to what Jan just asked, is what did we learn? And I felt, so that's how I use it. I don't build one wheel of progress with all the data from all interviews. What I look at it more like, I'm interested in these points, in these data points, and they can be totally different because the interviews, the stories that people tell are very different.
Yeah.
But these items, for example, a pain or an event, can be very similar. And that is that is where the method comes into play, and how we are able to combine interviews. And so that was one learning. It's not don't put like together an artificial customer journey. It doesn't make sense, because they are all separate, they are all different, but you can combine it. You can combine it at the element basis.
Okay. Can I maybe? So I would be really interesting in having maybe your view on this. I would have a tendency, but that's me, like, to say, okay, some of these elements are more important than others. So are all these 12 like equally valuable, or they matter equally? I would have a tendency, but that's where I'm coming from. I would say habits and pains. That's, I think, where the magic happens. But like, or is there just these are all the 12 things, or 12 elements that are equally important? They have the same kind of, I don't know, weight in what you can use them for.
Yeah, the way I look at it, it depends on what you want them to use for.
Okay, fair
so
enough.
In terms of like the customer jobs, we are really jobs focused. So we have a stage in the process where we prioritize customer jobs. So customer jobs in and of itself have a huge importance. But when you look at these items, so as I said, we have a structure where we look for these items. And in the last phase, when you create strategy, there are dedicated spaces where we put in also select elements. So we are not using all the elements. We make a selection, and then we put them in to the phase where they make the most sense. For example, the pushes and the habits are very important in the first phase where people are procrastinating. So with that information, what is pushing people, what is a fear maybe, but what are the habits? So we can work with the data and create a strategy. And there's no value proposition in the first quadrant of the strategy, because nothing we can really offer. We can just encourage people. We can message them, but we cannot offer a service because they're not at this stage. So what I want to show here is like that we very selectively think about, or very consciously think about, the elements that we create and how we use them to create strategy. And it's not like all over the place. The only phase or quadrant on the strategy board where we can put anything that may be interesting, like you said, is the last one, where we create a solution. There we are more open. It's like, hey, was it a pain, or maybe someone had a great gain that we can emphasize, or was an event that was typical, or kind of that 30,000-foot customer job. Is that, let's put it down as a data point, and then create a new product or service or something.
My question was similar to Jan's about the prioritization. Is there a quantitative phase, or like a survey type phase, or is most of this done with qualitative work?
That's a great question, Scott. We don't have a formal quantitative phase, but when it's like puzzle pieces. Here in interviews with the 12 elements, you collect puzzle pieces. Then you use all the puzzle pieces and put them on a huge table, start to sort them, to cluster elements that belong together. Then you generalize it, and you can see, was there like one guy, one interviewee mentioning that, or maybe there was 10 out of 10. So that puts a little bit of weight to that item or to that element. It's like when you see lots of people have that. So it's not a valid quantification, I think, but at least you get a really good sense. I'm a little bit skeptical, to be honest, about quantitative research, because when you just have a hard time to understand, to really understand how you can do this effectively with all the context.
Yeah.
But so out of context, quantitative research is really hard. So how do you would talk about the customer job? I mean, to begin with, I think yeah, maybe at a very kind of granular level, how hard is this to move this from left to right? Yeah, maybe, but this is highly contextual. So and it's interesting. It's a topic that I hope we have time to talk about. We do counts. We look at how many items we found in what category. And I mentioned at the beginning that I did some research where the interview had lots of constraints. You could see like an overweighting of constraints, and then you can have like a little statistic. I do this once in a while. I say, how many paints did we find? How many pushes? How many constraints? And it's interesting to see kind of the distribution of elements. So make a long story short, it's we don't do the quantitative thing, but maybe we are able to a certain extent marry the benefits of quant and qual research.
I'm a big believer in qualitative work. It's funny. I don't know if funny is the right word, but as a practitioner, we've sort of gotten, I don't know, we do use surveys and gotten used to that in the quantitative. However, if I'm as a practitioner, as a product manager practitioner, not as a jobs to be done practitioner, but as a product manager, I know that I've seen lots of great work done purely on qualitative research. So I'm a believer in it. And I share the skepticism that you have with quantitative at times. But you know, with a commitment to quantitative, it makes things very expensive for clients, slows things down. Right. So this is a question I'm sort of continually looking to answers for. And so just to be completely honest, I find it really refreshing that your method is generally mostly qualitative and you make no apologies for it. And you're like, look, we see patterns, we feel good about it, and we stand behind it. I find that refreshing. I can't quite get there myself, almost out of habit and years, but I very much, I sort of want to. I want to because when you do a quantitative study, if it says anything dramatically different than what you heard in qualitative, man, I really question it. I really like something has gone wrong. I honestly, you know, maybe I shouldn't say this in public, but I'm going to say it. But after qualitative, I really feel like I know what I need to know, but to be honest. Yep. And one of the main purposes of quantitative is it's almost to satisfy people who are not believers in the qualitative. I will say this, I think the qualitative approach, it puts, now that the researcher, you're the instrument, like you're the gathering instrument. So you must be much more skilled and able to eliminate your confirmation bias. And for example, you must hold on to, you know, not jump to conclusions quickly. And so I think it's a smaller subset of people that can do that. Qualitative well. But anyways, I'm jealous, to be completely honest, of your commitment to qualitative, and maybe that's something that I'll take on as a challenge to continually try to do better at that. But anyway, that's very interesting.
Scott, I'm totally with you, and that's exactly my experience. And I've seen people misusing quantitative data to make their point. But I think what we are battling with is that perception that quantitative data is more valid than qualitative data, and I really doubt that. And that's the reason why we put so much emphasis on hardening the data and telling people we are not looking at one kind of little data point. We are looking at patterns, but you don't need 100 interviews. It's like that would be like crazy. You need just a number of interviews. And also I see another huge benefit of structuring qualitative information, because it's so much more efficient. So what's your guess? How many interviews can you do? Like 45-minute interviews, including evaluation of the interview. How many do you think you can do a day?
You asking me? I would cap that at 2 personally. I've done more than 2, but it's almost always a mistake. Why do I say that? Because what I want to do you're asking me, when I do one interview, I want to assimilate that, think about it, learn from it, and for it to prepare me to do the next one.
Yeah.
If that gets, so 1 a day, you can do that. To do 3 a day, I definitely do not have time to do that. I do not have time to learn from it. Why do we do 2 a day, sometimes 3 a day? Honestly, it's just a schedule. Like, you're put on a schedule. We have to have this by this time. If you're asking me, I would much prefer to only do 1, but I feel like I could probably do 2 a day but it would be a very exhausting day. That's I don't know. How would you answer that question?
You mean me?
How would you answer that same question? Would you do 2 or
so
keep it just to 1? Or
yeah, of course, that's we started like doing one and then discussing for half an hour or maybe an hour. Right. And so with practice over time, we were able to do this in real time. So while the interview is going on, we have a lead interviewer. There's maybe 1 or 2 people taking notes on the wheel of progress already when the interview is going on. And then you take another maybe 15, 20 minutes to clean it up, to hone it, to rephrase the items, to put them in the right places. And with that, and beginning of the year, I was able, and that was exhausting, but I was able to do 7 interviews a day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In 1 day. Like starting at, I think we started at like 8, and then we had like a half an hour break and a lunch break, and like at 6 o'clock or so we were done. It was crazy, but it's possible. It's possible when you have listening skills, when your brain is trained to listen and to make an immediate decision, and just a little bit of cleanup and doing it as a team. Then you can really boost your efficiency of qualitative research.
7's a lot more than 2.
I
don't think I'm quite ready for that. But I think part of the takeaway is that you've got a team. It's not just one of you. It's one thing I heard. The other thing is you've got this structure. And so you're able to get information in your wheel of progress, meaning. So you're able to get what you hear into this structure for a little quicker interpretation. I think the only caveat I would add to that is I think it might depend on what I'm studying. If I'm studying surgery and there's lots of medical terminology, I'm probably doing less of those. I'm probably doing those maybe only 1 every other day. If I'm studying something more B2C like, or planning a vacation, something I'm familiar with, I would probably have a more comfort level with doing more. That might be my only, just to give you a more complete answer to your question.
Yes, and B2B interviews take longer naturally. I mean, you have more topics to cover, so of course then you can do less.
Yeah. I'm very jealous of the no quant.
So we're hitting the 1 hour mark. So I did want to talk about this your explorations in the AI space that you shared on LinkedIn. You mentioned some time ago previously in our discussion that you hoped we would be able to talk about some things and talking about the statistics. And I wondered if this was related to the AI stuff, or if you wanted to specify what it is that you hoped we would have time to talk about. I don't know if you recall.
Yeah, it's the reason I brought this up. I mean, I did these little statistics before I did but before we created the AI. So what we're using is Mural as a whiteboard, and then you can go into the canvas, and then you can tag the elements. And so we have we are tagging the elements. So it's kind of rather easy to make a statistics, because you mark them all, and then you look at I think information or something, and then it counts it, and then you do this for every item. Then you know how many you found, and you can, as a quant researcher, you can actually a qual researcher can quantify your efficiency of doing the interviews, how productive you were. But with the AI that we created, it got even easier. It's just a push of the button, and then you get it found 231 elements, and these are broken up in habits, pushes, pulls, and so on.
So maybe you can describe how this works a bit. So what's the process of using this AI? At what point do you use it? What does it spit out? Yeah. Just maybe walk us through the process.
Yeah. So so in general, it's a web-based ChatGPT based companion software. So why did we call it companion? Because it's not an autopilot. It's like we want that people just push buttons and create results. It needs to be a companion to you as a user, as a researcher, as a generalist who goes through the process. In general, in customer progress design, we have like 5 steps, starting with creating hypothesis, creating interviewee profiles, inviting people through the interviews. In the second phase, we look at doing the interviews, capturing them on the wheel of progress. Step number 3, we are consolidating, we are aggregating the items, we are generalizing them, we build the job map, we build customer profiles back. In the 4th step, we do prioritization. In the last step, we do of jobs, and in the last one, we create the strategy. The AI is supposed to help you in all the steps, but we are not there yet. It can help you getting started with the interviews in terms of when you have an audio recording, which we always try to do as an audio recording, you can load it into the software and it creates a wonderful transcript. And I have to say, these are the best quality transcripts I've ever seen. It's like, even when people have accents, when there are audio issues, somehow magically the AI can fill the gaps, and it makes sense. And you read it and say, yeah, this was exactly what the interview was about. And in the next step, so once you loaded the interview and created your PDF of the transcript, then you can analyze it for the 12 elements, and then you get a text box, and it lists all the elements. And then in the next step, you would project it onto a wheel of progress.
So just on the previous step. So how does it? Do you have to kind of feed it some information about what these 12 elements are? How does that work, so that you can have it automatically kind of classify things in the 12 elements?
Yes, it does it automatically. It's programmed with our criteria, so it can identify the elements. And
that's amazing.
It's amazing. To be honest, I was shocked. I was a little bit worried, because this mental model and data model was like in my head, right? And we talked about, can you distinguish this and that? And I was a little bit worried. And it was like, when I saw it the first time, I said, oh my goodness, it makes sense. It was not 100% right? There's
you basically just give it the definitions of these categories, and then it can classify.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, exactly. And it's still a little bit work in progress, because we need to kind of learn and train the AI to do it even better. But it's like what you get today is like, wow, you can really use it. So out of the audio, or if you have a PDF, you just push a button, and then it takes maybe a couple of minutes, and then it comes up with this list of 12 items. In the next step, it projects it to the wheel of progress, because we want people to work with the tools they know already. So they go like they click on the habits button, and then they get the list of identified habits, and then you can delete some if you think they don't make sense. For example, habits that are not in the way of making progress, you could take them out. You can add some. You can reassign a habit to maybe something else if the AI didn't get it right. So you can do this with all the items, but it's just super quick, because it's like, wow, boom, there it is. And when you're sure that this what got us right, you can add another interview, and then you clean it up, and then you click a button and can export it back to Mural. And this was like my most favorite feature, is like to make sure that you have a workflow, and it creates a new mural, and then it populates all the items. You can watch it populate, and then you just mark them all, and you say, okay, please sort them by category, and then you have your items there, and you can just go ahead and put them back on the wheel of progress. So that's kind of comfortable. Workflow wise, we probably look at other whiteboard tools as well, export functionality. And then there was something I was totally blown away. It's like when my business partner, they implement some advanced analytics. So what you can do like a by job or by push or by habit, an analysis, and it brings you up. It talks about all the customer jobs or all the habits, constraints. It's like if you have to explain to someone else, this is just wonderful. Or you can go into the strategy space, push a button, and then it creates a Facebook campaign with 5 posts. When the first time I looked at these 5 posts, I noticed this was 100% related to the one interview that we had. And I thought, how great is that? It really makes sense. I mean, I'm not a social media expert. I thought, wow, this can get me started. It can get me lots of great ideas that really hit the things that we found out in the interview. And there's a lot of stuff more than you can do, like create a marketing plan and stuff like that. But to make a long story short, we try to support with a companion that 5-step process, or also mapping whatever analysis is created, or maybe creative ideas, that it kind of adheres to the framework of the 4 phases that we want the customer to go through.
And so how can people get a hold of this this tool? Is this something that when they hire you as a consultant or to come and help them, then they will have access to this tool? Or is this something you're making available for people to use?
Yeah, that is a great question. So right now we're doing a beta test phase. As I said, it's not finished. It has some kinks. The UI is like, yeah, you can use it, but it can be improved. But right now we have a program that people can participate in the beta. I can send you the link. It's on the Steady store. So the store that sells all the canvases, Osterwalder canvases. So I've partnered with Steadies on creating this piece of software, and they offer, you can subscribe to it. So we have a discount offer also for beta participants. And
we'll definitely send the link, and we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, great. So right now my thinking is I think we need to distinguish a little bit between people who consult others. So I need more formal education and a certification in the process, so I can make sure it's kind of handled properly. For someone kind of using it for themselves, or in a kind of in a company, for example, or in a startup, I trust they can use it. I just want to make sure when it's used for a third party that there's proper certification, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, definitely sounds great. Do you guys have any other questions?
Just one little follow-up to the AI. I guess almost every business, well, maybe not every, but there's service business for sure. We're, not quite sure how AI is going to change things. Lots of discussion going on. Just this morning, there was on LinkedIn, there was some some jobs we done, practitioners, we'll say sparring a bit about what AI is going to do and not going to do. Your application of it is very consistent with sort of what I see, which is it's just gonna be more tools for the practitioner that already knew what they were doing. Somebody that doesn't know jobs done at all, just doesn't have the basis of interviewing, all these various tools. It'd be like I mean, I guess one example that comes to mind is who's going to do these robotic surgeries? Are you just going to have a mechanic go in there? Or, no, you're still going to have surgeon using robots for surgeries. And it's sort of a fool's game to predict how technologies will be used. But that's my view, is exactly what you described. AI is going to be great tools in the hands of knowledgeable people, not so great in the hands of not knowledgeable people. But the future will tell.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think it's that's why we call it also a companion. It's not an autopilot. You need to know what you're doing. I think for the time being, that we have human-to-human interviews, and I have a hard time using AI to do an interview. I don't know if you would ever open up to an AI, at least if it's disclosed. That's but it certainly is helpful. It certainly will push boundaries. I've no doubt about it. It's like it can greatly accelerate learning, I think. So if you have someone who wants to learn the 12 elements, that takes some time. But if you have someone kind of virtually sitting by your side as a companion, as a guide, that can help you to get up to speed much quicker. I think that these are the kind of the benefits, but I cannot see this as a kind of a standalone solution. It's like anyone can do it. I cannot think that far, to be honest.
I mean, a fool with a tool, still a fool.
Exactly.
That's right.
Let's not get rid of the humans just yet.
Yeah.
No.
So I think this. I think we're getting to the end here, and I'll try and close it up. So. Just to remind everyone listening, Eckhart, you can find Eckhart at Unipro Solutions, the website unipro/solutions.com. You can find information about the Wheel of Progress at wheelofprogress.com, all in one word. You can probably find him on LinkedIn. Is there anything else you want, any other place that people should connect with you?
No, LinkedIn is great. I love to post stuff and also discuss with people exactly these issues topics that we talked today about.
Well, anyway, thanks so much. Really enjoyed the conversation, and that concludes today's Product Quest podcast. So please send any comments or ideas for future shows to productquestpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Right, spot on the questions. This is exactly what I think we all grapple with.